Hello, my name is Star, and today the movies that we're comparing are The Trap and The Sea Inside. So, I'll start off by saying that I really enjoyed The Sea Inside. No, yeah, The Sea Inside. Well, I enjoyed both, but The Sea Inside was a different movie. It was very different. It was like no other movie that I've ever really seen. Um, but yeah, it was quite good. And so when comparing like plots and like the plot lines, um, I think The Trap was more focused on like the. I guess they're both like they had both themes of like choice, like choices, but the Trap was a little bit more intense for me, I think, and it focused more on the actions and like the consequences, and I think the overall um, deeper like the more personal I guess what's the word? It focused more on like the personal aspect of choices and like how that affects someone's life. Where I feel like The Sea Inside, um, definitely the same theme of like choosing, but I think that was more like it was still personal. Don't get me wrong, but like it had to it was definitely more. I guess widespread than The Trap. The Trap felt very personal and like intimate in that family's life, and the Sea Inside, like it went it touched more people, like across I think where were they? Well, now a lot of people like not just in that country. I think it was Spain. Yeah, but a lot of people know now. Yeah, it was Spain. So, anyways, that and that's what I mean by like the different how they're still focused on like themes and or the choice, but they differ in that aspect for me, I think. And um I like how like in The Trap it was very intense, and like I think they kind of set it up in a way of like in kind of like a series of events where you kind of saw like each scene that happened. It was like more like it was kind of like a spiral, not only for the character himself, um, and like kind of losing who he was based on like what he felt he had to do for his son, but it was kind of like each scene you saw like you were just kind of sitting there, at least for me, thinking like, damn, like that is just like nothing was in their favor, and it definitely like it makes you feel almost, I feel like you can relate, even though you may have never been close to coming to that situation with having to like kill someone and having to do it like because that that's the only way you can save your son from dying is by taking another life, right? And I feel like that in itself is a really big decision and choice to make, you know and that affects your livelihood. But yeah, like after each scene, I think it was like a very it was meant to be heavy, and I think like yeah, basically what I'm saying is like each scene that cut, it was very like you could feel almost like you could feel for them and like really be there and like feel the fear and the anger. um I think that's really great for like a movie when it like happens in a series of events for me, and it just kind of like everything makes sense. And The Sea Inside, like you could technically say every movie has like a series of events that make sense, it coincides, but I think that The Sea Inside is different because they like, well, one, a lot of the movie is filmed in like the room that he's in, um, and but it's not like a boring movie at all. I think it's so good, and it definitely it touches on like, I think it was important how they mentioned in the movie that like when he was in the court, Spain is like considered, they consider themselves like a secular state, and just based on the context even alone, you could get a sense that that meant like not like religious based, even if you didn't know the word, just because the way that they were speaking and like the context around it. But yeah, how like they were secular, yet they were very concerned and against the idea of him like wanting to commit suicide. And if it's not for like religious reasons, like it may be for morality reasons. But if it's interesting that like when it comes to government, there's certain, and this goes for anywhere in the world, there's certain things that the government wants to regulate and tell you you can't do or you should do. Obviously, like there's the basic things that you should do, like to fulfill your like our duty as civilized humans and in the society we live in. But then there's also things that like catch people off guard, like wanting to have assisted suicide because you don't want to live anymore. And that's interesting in itself because like he well I think he had lived for so long, right? And he was like an older man. He made a choice, right? He made a choice for himself. And the way that everyone was against him kind of like, I think like it says a lot about how people, like the movie I think portrayed well like how people think about suicide and how they feel this kind of guilt or like need to help people, right? Like you want to help people naturally, but I think that in this movie it went beyond that and went to like it kind of like the idea of being selfish, I think, was there in the movie. Because for me it's like there's wanting to help someone, and then there's like ignoring someone's decision whether you agree with that or not, right? Like and he was in his right mind, like he was like just a regular guy, like he had humor still, like he was very real about his situation, he didn't sugarcoat anything. He, like however you looked at it, even if you don't agree with his decision, the fact is that like he wanted that for so long. And like I think it really speaks to how people have this need, and it's interesting because it's different for each person, like for all the people in the movie, like the lawyer, she like she very it was very like a complicated relationship, I think, for them. But she understood more so how he felt because she was going through a similar thing. And she even said like, I want to do this too, but then eventually changed her mind. And I think that was really sad, but like in real life I think that's very realistic, that people will change their mind about something so serious, especially since she had a shorter time to think about it. He had been wanting to do this for so long, and it's back to what I was saying. Basically, I think it's I like that the movie like made sure, like they had his, they captured his personal life, but they made sure to put those little moments in where he was, fighting like his case for wanting to do what he did. And they still never granted him his wishes. But I think that it definitely makes you think and gives you a perspective about government and the way that they regulate our actions and the way that we respond to them, right? But yeah, we can't just all go around being like, yeah, like I want to do this and you have to let me. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said about letting, like an individual human, first and foremost, like obviously, part of a society, but before that they're just their own human, right? Like I think there's something to be said about letting someone make a choice without interfering with that, because it's like, where's the line of like freedom and then like freedom to an extent, right? But like I said, it's an iffy like thing, because if that applied to everything, like letting people choose whatever they want, it would get kind of sticky. So there's that, yeah. But yeah, that's the plots. I think the characters were interesting, especially in the trap. The scene side, I liked that there was a bunch of different personalities, especially when it came to like agreeing or disagreeing with his decision to commit suicide. But in the trap, it was very different, because I don't think there was like any humor at all in that movie. But the characters, especially the dad, I think like you could see it starts off sad, right? But even then you could still see the progression of like very very intense like mood changes, and like the very like depressive feel of the movie, and the tone itself too was very like gloomy and dark, and the like the color tone of it too was like it was very like it reminded me of The Lives of Others. Like it was very muted almost, and just dull, and I think that worked really well for a movie like this, where sometimes life isn't like, what do you call it? Sometimes life isn't like bright and sunny, metaphorically and also, literally. And it just, I think that like dullness of the movie really, I like I guess helped the theme of the movie, which was like desperation, hardship for sure, and yeah, very similar to Lives of Others, where it was like choices that the characters made affected things, and it wasn't just like one thing, like, oh, like this sucks now, like this and this. It was a very heavy choice, like each thing that happened, and when you compare that to like real life, I think it's definitely like, I don't know, I guess that movie is definitely like a thinker, because you think about like, what if I was in that situation, would I do that? And I think a lot of people would be like, no, like I wouldn't kill someone. But then, a lot of people would be like, yeah, I would do anything for my son, like, whatever it takes. And I think it's one of those things where, like, unless you're in the actual situation, like, you can never actually say what you would do, because you don't know, right? And it's, yeah, I just think that's, like, something to think about. I think that movie, like, anyone could watch it, I think, and just sit there going, like, wow, like, like, what is he gonna do? Like, what would I do if I was in that situation? Yeah, and then the themes, I talked about some themes. I think for the scene side, taking things for granted is definitely a theme, and death, of course, freedom, and then choices, like I said. Yeah, so the visual style, in the trap, it's dull, like it's very sad almost, and I think in the scene side, it's less dull, but I think there's still like a lack of color. I don't know, I feel like when I see the character San Pedro, there is like a certain light to him, because like that kind of surrounds him. I think it's that like self-deprecating humor that he has, and like the awareness, but I think that even then, like when you look away for a second, or you think about like the situation he's in, or you see those moments where he's like crying, or like he realizes the intensity and the depth of his situation, you also realize like, yeah, this isn't a happy movie, and even though there's some elements of humor, like it's very much a sad concept, and a very real concept too, because this was real. And a lot of people, like, this is something like me and my mom have talked about, because we saw I think it's called $1 Million Baby, the movie with Hilary Swank, I think. And that other guy, he's so famous. I forget, but yeah, that white guy, it's like Clinton or something. But yeah, that movie, kind of reminds me of The Sea Inside, or The Sea Inside reminds me of that, because she, at the end, she tries to commit suicide, and obviously the nurse's jobs are, to like resuscitate her. And the guy that like trained her, he sees that she like truly just wants to like be free of the pain she's in. And it's hard, like it's hard to go through that and see someone like that. But it's also hard to know that like you're letting someone die, like you're not necessarily killing them yourself, but you're letting them die, like in The Sea Inside. But yeah, and I think that the cultural context of the movies definitely, like I said, in The Sea Inside, it touches on like the culture, the history of Spain, and why they didn't let him do what he wanted to do. And for I don't know, like it seemed very much like of a morality thing, but it's interesting that that's like one of the points, that they make, like they can't let him die, or like they're not gonna go along with him killing himself. And I feel like a lot of that was from guilt, but I don't know, like it's an interesting thought to me about like why it would be for guilt or sadness when like you see someone else is in pain. At some point, like you kind of have to step aside and just allow someone what they want. But like I said, it's a hard situation, because you can't speak for everyone in a situation like that. But yeah, the government, the culture around like committing suicide, like is just like big no. And then to what do you call it? In the trap, I think like the cultural context, there's like an element of like what do you call that word? Like I can't think of the word. There's an element of like, because the people have like I guess like I can't think of the word. Oh my god. It's like mob life, but like not, because I don't know that they were like mobs necessarily, but that kind of thing. Like I think that was some of the cultural context. Yeah, I think I can't really think of like what I was trying to say, but other than that, I can't really think of any other cultural context that I did see in that movie. I'm sure there is some, but like I said, yeah, I don't really see it. So maybe in one of the responses, like someone could tell me like if they notice any cultural context in the trap. But yeah, that is all I have to say. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, bye bye.